Thanks for joining this episode of our webinar series on best practices in eDiscovery, generative AI, and digital forensics. Today's session is focused on providing you with insights into the rapidly developing GenAI landscape and best practices that you can use in engineering GenAI prompts for your practice. My name is Jeff Fugit. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Lexbe, and I'll be the moderator for today's event. I'm excited for you to hear from our guest speaker. She's an accomplished GC with prompt engineering expertise. We'll start things off by discussing the impact of GenAI on legal services, and then we'll jump into the prompt engineering best practices. We've got a lot to cover, so I'll jump right in. Our webinars take place monthly and cover a variety of relevant eDiscovery, artificial intelligence, and digital forensic topics, trends, best practices, and strategies. We've got limited seating, so be sure to register early for the sessions that are of interest to you. If you have technical issues or questions, please email us at webinars@lexbe.com and we'll address those right away. Our webinars are available online at lexbe.com for viewing via streaming video or downloadable as a PDF presentation or MP3 podcast. You'll find this webinar and a complete listing of other webinars at lexbe.com or on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions during today's session, please enter them in the Q&A portion of the GoToWebinar console, and we'll answer them after the event. To be notified of future live and on-demand events, please email us at webinars@lexbe.com or follow us on LinkedIn. For more than 18 years, Lexbe's been helping legal teams handle their cases affordably and efficiently. We have the most comprehensive GenAI deployment within our platform. This includes Lexbe Pilot for early case analysis, case strategy development, and decision support. We have Lexbe Copilot, which is your document review assistant. And then we have Autopilot, which delivers automated document review for responsiveness and privilege. In the Lexbe eDiscovery platform, GenAI can help you automatically summarize documents like depositions or medical records, creates case timelines, translates foreign languages, identifies hyperlinked files, performs entity detection, provides sentiment analysis, and will analyze documents for responsiveness and provide you with a confidence score and the rationale for that decision. In addition, our platform is lightning fast and processes up to 10 terabytes of data per day. Last week, we had 1.8 terabytes of files come in from a client, and I was just amazed at how fast they processed and were ready for review in a fraction of a day. We also deliver the industry's fastest return on investment, and we're rated as the eDiscovery company that's the easiest to do business with, a high performer, and the easiest to administer. We have a state-of-the-art forensic lab staffed with Cellebrite certified and Magnet Axiom certified forensic investigators who perform full and targeted forensic collections. We're also a Metaspike partner and perform forensic collections of hyperlinked files for our customers' cases. If you'd like a demonstration of our platform or would like a complimentary forensic consultation, simply email us at sales@lexbe.com and we'll get that scheduled. Joining us today is Spiwe Jefferson. I'm going to let Spiwe introduce herself with a slide that she has at the beginning of the prompt engineering portion of today's session. And before I bring Spiwe on for that discussion of the GenAI landscape in legal, I'd like to ask for your participation in a polling question. And that is, are you currently utilizing GenAI in your practice? And while you're answering that, I'll thank you for participating in our polling questions today. All right, without further ado, I'll bring Spiwe on for the first portion of today's session. Thank you for joining us, Spiwe. It's a pleasure to have you on our webinar series. In the past, I know you've written about how AI is fundamentally different from previous technological transformations. How are you seeing this play out in the legal sector?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here, Jeff. I am delighted to talk to your audience. You know, AI's transformation in the legal sector feels to me like, unlike previous technological changes that simply digitize our existing processes, AI is fundamentally reshaping how legal work is performed. So we are seeing AI assist with contract analysis, due diligence, legal research in ways that actually augment human judgment rather than just speed up the manual tasks. So, for example, large language models can now identify contractual risks and suggest improvements while explaining the reasoning. So that enables us as legal practitioners to then focus on higher level strategy and client counseling. And this is, I think, a really considerable shift from AI as a tool to AI as a collaborator in legal reasoning.
I'm in 100% alignment with you. On the eDiscovery side, what we're seeing is previously, as you had mentioned, all the digital transformations that have taken place, we're really working toward more efficiently delivering the gold standard of having human eyes on documents and reviewing those documents. And now what we're seeing is we're seeing AI, not get eye fatigue, not get fatigued in the middle of the night working through a document review. It's incredibly efficient and incredibly effective at identifying which documents are responsive, which are not responsive, among other things. And there's a whole host of other use cases, but it's pretty amazing how landscape changing this is.
Well, and I wonder how that will change billing practices. I think you and I talked about this when we were preparing for this discussion. And what will that do to how we think, especially for organizations that still bill by the hour, for example? Are you seeing changes even now that are taking into account the speed at which we can work because we're now using these tools?
That's a good question. I think there are some changes that we're starting to see. By and large, one thing that I think is benefiting the law firms and their clients is being able to get from document ingestion into really an early case assessment that is comprehensive and very
Mhm.
effective. So now they can truly get into developing their case strategy more efficiently and more effectively.
I would agree with that.
Can you share some examples of how AI is changing the way that you work?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. In my own practice, when I think about what I do every day and how it has changed. So I could bucketize how I integrate AI tools in across three key areas. So first, I use it for knowledge synthesis. So AI helps surface relevant precedents and regulations across vast databases connecting dots that I might miss. So all of us, I think everybody who's ever done legal research, you always, even if you're using a great database like Lexis or Westlaw, you find what you find based on what you look for, and then you're left thinking, okay, so this is my conclusion based on what I found, but is this everything that's out there? Is there something I could have missed? And you're always worried about not the cases that you saw, but you're always worried about the cases that you didn't see. And so now AI can help me really synthesize that information and reduce my concerns about what I might have missed because my AI tool is like a sprightly legal um, associate who has read the entire internet, right? So that helps. So that's way number one. Way number two is document automation. So AI helps me in drafting and reviewing routine legal documents, and that allows me to focus on complex conversations and negotiations. For example, let's suppose that we have a piece of litigation that we're following and some federal court issues a 30-page opinion. Once upon a time, I would take that opinion and I would do one of two things with it. If I actually had the time to read it, which as a general counsel, I have a lot of things to do, and I often don't have the time to just leisurely sit down, pull up my cup of coffee, and start reading. I might send it to my outside counsel instead because they're going to have somebody who's going to synthesize those 30 pages and get back to me with here are the high points. Now I can literally take that 30-page opinion, and because it's in the public domain, I don't have an issue with plugging it into ChatGPT or Claude AI and saying, give me the high points of this decision, and in 5 minutes, I have those. So that's the second way that I use my AI tools. The third thing is for client communication. So now let's say the opinion came out, I have the high points for what it means, and now I want to summarize those high points in a way that is going to be easily digestible for my CEO. And so I might say to Claude or Chat, summarize these for a CEO who doesn't have a lot of time and doesn't want a big read. So put it in bullet points and do it in plain English without any legalese, right? And now I have my memo that I'm going to send off to my CEO, and it has taken me literally a fraction of the time that it used to. So those are the key ways today that I am using AI tools.
Those are great examples of use cases and very similar to some of the use cases that we see. We've got a whole host of use cases across a wide range of practice areas, but summarizing lengthy depositions, automatically defining acronyms in industries that are full of them, like telecommunications. If you've got people reviewing documents that are full of those acronyms, that can dramatically slow down a review process. ChatGPT or Claude can help define those and does a great job with that. We've seen examples where in medical malpractice or in personal injury where one of our customers will have hundreds of medical records, electronic health records that they have to review, and we're able to summarize those health records in a very short amount of time with the dates and the medications and the prognoses and all of that, which dramatically reduces the amount of time that they have to deal with those situations. So we've saved many a weekend for many lawyers by performing functions like that. And then another use case, analyzing financial records, where we had a customer that went in and said, hey, help me understand all the transactions that took place in these financial statements. What were the dates? What were the account numbers? What was the amount of the transaction? And put that in a delimited format that can easily be dropped into a spreadsheet. And so that, again, has saved an immense amount of time. So we see all different kinds of use cases in synthesizing data. And the great thing about it, too, is if you want to ask if a document is relevant or not, it gives you the rationale as to why. It can give you a confidence score, and it gives you the rationale. Unlike legacy technology-assisted review, where it's a little bit of a black box scenario and you don't have visibility into how it made that decision. Now you've got full visibility into how that decision was made.
Well, and this raises a question that I think is on the minds of a lot of legal practitioners about whether AI then replaces the human element or whether it augments that human element. Have you found, as you're doing that work that you're describing, have you found that you can eliminate any of the humans that are actually necessary to get that work done?
I think it has had an impact on the efficiency and improved the efficiency of the humans.
Yeah.
I think there absolutely has to be humans in the loop. And I don't think generative AI will displace lawyers and paralegals. I think it's going to displace some of the work that I don't know they were necessarily, achieving billable hours on previously anyway, some of it. Um, so I think it's going to make them more efficient and more effective at what they do. In fact, I think they'll become super paralegals and super lawyers through the augmentation process.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I have spent a lot of time thinking about this because as I'm seeing the way that I work change, I am now also wondering about the impact on my external resources. For example, um, I spent 15 years of my career in law firms, and 10 of those years were in a high stakes commercial litigation firm where we represented Fortune 500 companies across the country. And so the way that work would come in is the general counsel would have a conversation with the partner and say, I need to understand, the law on X or what we can do about Y in a particular case. The partner would come and the partner would assign it to an associate. The associate then has like 2 weeks to do the research and come up with this beautiful memo. And then the partner and the associate would work on it together. And then it would ultimately go back to the client 2 weeks later with an executive summary that says, and here's what our recommendation is, and like 100 pages of analysis, right?
Right.
And it was good work because, boy, you got some good billable time out of that. Well, now that I'm a general counsel, the thing that I know is that actually I don't need the 90+% certainty and confidence level for that kind of deliverable anymore, because in the world of risk analysis, you just need to have like directional information. So it made me think about what is the impact of me being able to play my own associate now instead of having to go to the law firm, because all of a sudden in 5 minutes I can have good enough work product, right? And but this is where I have landed. I don't think it replaces, just like you said, I don't think it replaces legal professionals. I think what it does, though, it redefines the legal role. And for legal professionals that can effectively leverage the tools, I think that is where we're going to see people who have a real advantage. I think it's a bit like having a scientific calculator, which, in other words, if all you know how to do is add and subtract, right? Your
Yep.
scientific calculator is not going to be very useful. But if you know sine and cosine and you know algebra, then you're going to get a lot more value out of that calculator because you know how to do the prompting. And so I think that is the difference that we are going to see. But I also suspect that there might be a need, especially if you're sitting in a law firm, for example, where you're still billing by the hour, where if you have the first time, and I haven't said this to any of my outside counsel, but the first time that an in-house lawyer gets a bill for a 10-hour legal research project, and that in-house lawyer says, wait, I could have done this for myself for 5 minutes without this massive bill. I'm curious about whether those kinds of conversations will follow and whether we will have to rethink value versus billing by the hour.
Yeah, I think um, I think those conversations will take place, and I think we'll likely see some shifts in that. At the same time, I'm thinking there's probably no better time to, if I'm leaving law school, or maybe if I'm at a big law firm and I'm interested in hanging out my own shingle, there's probably no better time to start a law firm if that's what you're interested in doing, because of the tools that are available and how cost effective they are. I mean, it's pretty incredible what you can be equipped with in a very short and inexpensive way. So,
I totally agree with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do you view kind of the difference between an AI driven leadership mindset versus an AI enabled leadership mindset?
Well, it's that's a great segue from what we were just talking about. I think of AI driven mindset as um, that is where you would view AI as the primary driver of decisions, potentially over relying on data and algorithms, right? Because the thing that we know and the thing that we have heard, especially in areas like HR, is that AI is programmed by humans. AI is trained on data that was created by humans at some point. And so, to the extent that there is bias in the documents that it's trained on, then it will reflect back to us our own biases that we have embedded in our data and in our algorithms. And so, at the same time, I think there is sometimes an over reliance where, and you see it, I remember it most when people wound up, you saw on shows like 60 Minutes where people wound up on the no fly list because their name was very close to some other name that winds up on the no fly list. And then this person gets to like the TSA checkpoint and says, wait, but I'm not that person. And then the TSA person says, right, but it says right here. The computer says that that's you. And so then you have to like do a lot of work. So I think of that as that is an example of AI driven mindset where it's like, because the AI said the thing, right? Then I'm going to rely on the thing. And one of the very early examples that we all heard about, that one unfortunate pair of lawyers that sent that brief, because chat said, yes, these citations are correct, then they didn't shepherdize them. And so that's an example of AI driven mindset. In contrast, an AI enabled mindset sees AI, I think, as a powerful tool that enhances human judgment in the way that you and I have been talking about, but without replacing it. So, AI enabled leaders understand AI's capabilities and limitations. They use it to augment their decision making, but they maintain human agency and values at the center. They focus on building teams that combine both the human and the artificial intelligence effectively. So I hearken back to my example of I think of my AI tools as a sprightly associate who has read the entire internet. But it's a junior associate, so it does need supervision.
I really like the way that you framed that up. I would agree. I think there are some adoption challenges. I think the technology is evolving very, very rapidly. And I think there are kind of a small set of firms that have been early adopters and they're applying a bunch of resources to it. A lot of those are some of the larger firms. Now, the smaller and mid-sized firms, I think there's certainly some work to do to catch up and to ensure and investigate and understand what kind of impact this is going to have on their practices.
I completely agree. And I think what that means, Jeff, is that mindset really matters. It's I'm a certified mindfulness practitioner in addition to being general counsel and chief of staff and corporate secretary and all of that. But, I think I've been practicing mindfulness meditation for over 2 decades now, written books about it and everything. And I think that in an environment where technology is changing the way that we work, and it is a disruptive factor in our profession, then mindfulness and just being conscious of what's happening in our own perspective is really important. And so, I I think for us, I hear a lot of fear in the profession right now about what's going to happen. I hear law students asking questions about, well, should I even bother going to law school, or is AI just going to take over the world, right? I think it's easy. I hear a lot of lawyers who will say, I haven't used AI tools because I'm afraid of the hallucination. I'm afraid that they're not reliable. I'm afraid of, pick a thing, right? And then there are a lot of others who are afraid that it's going to take your job. And I always say, oh, you shouldn't be afraid of ChatGPT taking your job. You should be afraid of the lawyer who knows how to use chat better than you taking your job, because they're going to be a lot more productive, right? And so just to be aware of how is this impacting, how is this evolution that we're watching, because none of us really knows where this is going to end. And so there's a measure of ambiguity and uncertainty about what's going to happen. And so just being aware of what's happening inside my own brain and what is happening with respect to my own stress levels, and how much of this weird new disruption can I control, and thinking intentionally about how then do I master this so that I'm not feeling as anxious about it, and so that, by the way, I can increase my productivity and I'm going to be a much better and much more fruitful professional, and I can do my work faster if I master it. So I think for me, when I think about how do we think about it and where does mindfulness come into play, those are the kinds of things that are important, because we talk a lot about the technology, but what's really important, I think, is also at the intersection of the technology and how humans process and think and feel. What then do we do there?
I think that's a great perspective and an excellent point that you make there. I think being present and understanding and not being fearful. I think um, your counseling on that front is spot on.
Well, thank you. I remember watching, for those of you who haven't seen it, there's a movie that came out, I think maybe last year or the year before, called Hidden Figures. And it was about the women who, three Black women in particular, who helped to get NASA a launch to the moon at the time. And the reason, and Jeff, you and I talked about that,
Yeah.
the reason it comes to mind as like an excellent example of where we are right now was because there were these human beings called calculators back then. And all they did was calculate, right? There were women who worked at NASA, and their job was just to do the longhand calculations.
Yep.
And at the time, IBM came out with this massive machine, and it was so big they had to take the doors off the office in order to get it into the room where it was supposed to live. And there was a lot of nervousness because this calculator, because it could run calculations, and there were a lot of people who were, on the verge of losing their jobs. And so this one woman then went to the library, and she was a Black woman, so there was some drama in her ability to actually get the library book that provided the instruction on how to run this machine. So NASA puts the machine in, they're all excited, we got a calculator, and then nobody knew how to use it. They didn't even know how to turn this thing on. And so she has been studying and studying and studying, and she's been teaching her team how to do it. So she comes in, long story short, she saves the day because she knows how to use the calculator, and her
Go.
team's jobs are saved. And so I think of that being this moment for us where, let's learn how to calculate. And that's exactly why we're here today.
Yep. I think that's great. And, there have been reports that I've seen that have come out that say, if you have generative AI skills as a lawyer, your compensation level in your billable rate goes up significantly. So,
Really?
yep.
Hey, the next time I look for a job,
There you go.
I
There
will
you
lead
go.
with that.
Well, now hopefully we can transition and we will equip our audience with the skills they need to start benefiting from that as well.
Well, that is absolutely right, Jeff. And part of what you and I have been so excited to do is we have been excited to share with the audience ways that we are going to equip you to learn how to calculate. And this is where we get to have all the fun, I think. So we're going to walk you through how do you master. Now, as a so this is a bit about me, General Counsel, Chief of Staff, Corporate Secretary, certified prompt engineer. That's probably the most interesting part and the most relevant part about our conversation today. If you go to Amazon or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you run a search for my name, you will find my podcast and book, podcast in particular, Mindful in Five, where we talk about how you as a leader can use mindfulness in your daily work. So we're going to start and dive right in, because the meaty part of this session is really going to be teaching you how to put all of these concepts together so that you too can be a prompt engineer extraordinaire. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the primer. If any of these AI or artificial intelligence, large language model, or if you hear people talking about LLMs, we all know that chat is called ChatGPT, but some people don't know what GPT stands for. It stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And I think just the definition reminds me, let's not be fooled into thinking that chat is a person that's actually having a conversation with me. GPTs are tools that are predictive in their design. And what they're predicting is not the future, not what's right, not what's correct. What they're actually predicting is the right combination of words in response to the prompt that you provide. And so being good at prompting in the right ways becomes critically important. So ChatGPT, Jasper, Spellbook, Perplexity, Google Notebook LM, all of these are different versions of large language models that do different things. Here's what I will tell you. Perplexity, I use every day. Perplexity is it's an AI search engine. Now you might be thinking, well, what's the difference? I'll give you an example. If I go to Google or Yahoo or AltaVista, I'm dating myself, or I go to Bing and I type in a search term, right? I'm going to get, historically, I would receive a list of links prioritized by relevance typically that respond to my question. And I have to click on the link and I might be met with an article that I have to read through to find the information that I need. Now, if I go to Perplexity AI and I ask Perplexity a question, what is the latest law in Minnesota on artificial intelligence? Instead of generating a list of links, Perplexity is going to give me an answer like ChatGPT will give me an answer. But the difference is Perplexity is actually generating an answer that is based on real-time inputs. And it gives me the sources and the citations for each piece of the answer that it gives me for where it got that information. So I can click on the link on the little, it looks like a little circular footnote. I can click on that and I can go directly to the article where it got that information. So if you haven't tried Perplexity, I encourage you to try it today. It will really help your search terms. So, how are companies using AI? Well, and before we go back to, here's the other thing that I will tell you that I feel like I know a fair amount about AI tools, but this is the one that just blew my mind. Google Notebook LM. This is an AI-powered language model that is designed to help and summarize, organize, and retrieve information. But here's the thing that blew my mind. If you take a document, let's say you have a research paper and you upload it and make sure that you pick something out of the public domain, upload it into Notebook LM. And what it will do, among other things, is it will generate a podcast episode of two people having a conversation about this document that you just uploaded. Now, it's not going to save you from having to read the document, but it will give you interesting context. And it will have these two AI chatbots talking to each other, sounding like human beings. And so that is where the technology has gone, and it's really quite fascinating. So I won't spend much time on this slide, but these are just examples of how companies are using AI. For those of you who are lawyers, whether you are in a law firm or whether you are in-house, part of what you should be aware of is that you've got IT departments all over the place that are experimenting with different tools. And so part of the reason you need to understand AI and how it works, and how every legal practitioner, whether you're a paralegal, whether you're a document reviewer, the reason you need to understand how these large language models work is because they will increasingly impact the kind of advice that you have to give to your clients. So, for example, let's say your company has a chatbot that they put out on the internet, and the chatbot mostly provides good answers and sometimes maybe not. And your engineers can't understand, or they probably do, and you need to as well, why it's giving sometimes bad answers because they've trained it and they've programmed it. Well, because it's a predictive model, if it's built on a chat GPT chassis, for example, then because it's a predictive model, it is generating original answers that predict the best answer in response to the question that the customer asked. And so that is why sometimes it will override what you told it not to say and say the predictive thing because that's the best answer. So understanding, for example, that that's how these models work and it's not because the IT people got it wrong is helpful as you're trying to think of how do we reduce the risk of giving customers the wrong information, just as an example. So this is why it's important for all of us to understand. There are laws, and at the time that we set up this session, this was the state of the law. It changes all the time. So I recommend that you all just stay abreast, and you can go to Perplexity and you can ask and you can go see what the latest laws are, because now you don't even have to rely on a presentation that might be obsolete today and tomorrow and in the next hour or two. But just remember that there are guardrails. Before we begin, here's the thing that I want you to always remember about large language models. And if you remember this, then you don't have to be afraid of using it. I like to say, large language models are sometimes wrong, never in doubt, always confident. Once upon a time, I asked ChatGPT, how many R's are in the word strawberry? And Chat, with great confidence, said, there are two R's in the word strawberry. And I said, Chat, are you sure? Yes, I am absolutely certain there are two R's in the word strawberry. And there has been some research that demonstrates that large language models, for unknown reasons, actually respond well to human type motivation. So I say to Chat, so Chat, my job is on the line and it depends on you giving me the right answer. And by the way, if you get the answer right, I will give you a treat. How many R's are in the word strawberry? There are three R's in the word strawberry. So this is what I mean when I say they are sometimes wrong, never in doubt, always confident. If any of you are able to ask Chat a question to which Chat actually says, I don't know, I want you to email me immediately, because I don't know anybody who has been able to get that answer out of ChatGPT. And by the way, all of the graphics in this deck are graphics that I created myself using ChatGPT. So you get a sense for the things that you can do. And I'm not an artist, I'm just a lawyer. And, you don't want to get lawyers designing stuff, but this is an idea. And there's some problems with Chat when you start creating pictures. So I said to Chat to get these two pictures, I said, give me an image of a heavy set man who's typing at his laptop. And I got the first image that you see there to the immediate right of let's create. Then I said, make it look more like a photo. And then I got the second picture. Now, I don't think of that guy as heavy set, right? But that's what I got. And I tried like the dickens. I tried overweight. I tried heavyset. I tried potbelly. I tried all kinds of things. And sometimes Chat will say, well, it'll say something ethical and it will refuse to generate the image. But I never did manage to get a picture of a heavyset man typing at his laptop. And by the way, speaking of bias, if you don't articulate and specify a race, Chat will automatically, so if you say, I want a lawyer who's doing blah, 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 it will generate pictures of Caucasian images. So if you want an Indian person, an African American, if you want a Somalian, you have to specify because the default is very thin Caucasian people and every other race, very thin people of all these other races. And so that's just something to know and remember. So here's where the fun comes. A lot of people that I've talked to have only used the free version of Chat. This is what the paid version looks like. So I land here. And the reason I wanted to show you this is so you can see the differences. I don't know what the free version has anymore, but now what you see in the far left is you see it says ChatGPT, and then you see these different, each one of those icons represents a different version of Chat. Creative Writing Coach, that is different. DALL-E is the part that will generate the images. That is where I generated all of the images that you're going to see in this deck. The GC version, I call it Chat GC, and I could have named it that. But the GC version is one that I programmed, and I said, I took my job description and I uploaded it and I gave it a persona prompt. We'll learn how to do that later. You are a general counsel who is really good at these things. And I literally pasted my job description that was publicly posted when I got this job. And you understand all the laws across the United States. And every time I ask you a question, I want you to give me a question that takes into account these parameters that I have given you. Okay? Chat says, yeah. And so that is GC. So what that means is anytime I have a legal-like question, I go to that version and I don't have to create another persona prompt because it already knows. At the bottom, you see where it says Explore GPTs. It has, Chat now is constantly coming up with new versions of default GPTs, so you don't even have to program them. Here's an example. So it has something called consensus at the time that I took the screenshot, and it will describe for you what they are. So there's a consensus GPT, there's a universal primer GPT, there's a grimoire GPT, there's a write for me GPT, write tailored, engaging content with a focus on quality, relevance, and precise word count. So these are all the ways that you can program your chatbot. So if you remember earlier, we talked about the fact that a scientific calculator is of no real value to you if you don't know how to use it. The versions of GPT and your ability to program your chatbot is the difference between using your scientific calculator to just do 1 + 1 versus using your scientific calculator to run, algebraic and sine, cosine, and, all sorts of complex parameters. So the thing that we wanted to show you today is like really practical stuff. What is the prompt that gets you a different kind of result? So prompt number 1 is the legal persona prompt. And what it means is rather than going to Chat and simply asking, what is the difference between indemnity and defense in contract language? You give it a persona. You are an outstanding super lawyer, law firm partner with 100 years of experience. Why not? In product liability law. Your expertise includes, paste your job description, right? If you are a partner at a law firm, or if you're an associate at a law firm who wishes to be a partner, or who wishes for partner level intelligence, paste the job description that you want. And you tell it, you provide succinct answers in plain English. Now, what I have found is if you just ask chat a random question, it'll give you a fulsome answer. Sometimes that goes on for paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs. So we're going to learn how to reduce that to what you actually want and need. But the legal persona prompt, or the persona prompt in general, is going to be one of the easiest prompts that you can use to get the responses that you need that are better than just a generic answer. Second is the audience persona prompt. So you can say, for example, explain X to me and assume that I am person Y. Explain, and these are examples of what you can say. So play with it, have fun with it, pick anything that you like. Explain the theory of relativity to me as if I'm a 5-year-old, because personally, I don't really understand it. So you have to give me the really basic stuff. Explain the rule against perpetuities. Lawyers, this is one we struggled with for always and forever in law school. And explain it to me as if I'm not just a law student, but I'm a stupid law student. So it's got to be like super basic. So even I get it if I'm a stupid law student. Assume I'm a board juror. So if I am getting ready, if I am a paralegal and I have to put together a draft opening or a draft closing, and we have some theory, res ipsa loquitur, pick a thing, right? Elements of a crime, whatever it is. Complex medical malpractice examples, pick a thing, right? Explain it to me as if I'm a board juror. In other words, I'm not really that interested in this subject matter, so you can't talk to me like I'm an expert, and just see what you get. Explain the TSR to an impatient CEO and why it is important. First of all, if I have primed my GPT and I've used the GC version, it probably already knows what TSR is going to be, and it's not going to come up with some weird, unrelated acronym, because it's going to understand that I'm asking it about the telesales rule as an example. So this is how you can create an audience for your GPT that will get you a better result. And as I'm doing this stuff, if you want to pull up your GPT and start playing with the prompts, absolutely play and play and play. Or you can pause at any time and you can try these things and see what you get. Iterative prompts. So one of the really cool things about large language models is you can actually have iterative responses. It's like a conversation. So let's say you gave it your first persona prompt and you got miles of explanation that you're just like, this is too long, I'm not going to read it. You can say to it, rewrite this explanation in a sophisticated and formal language that an in-house general counsel would understand. And it will do that. And then you can ask it, you can say, shorten it. That's one of my favorite prompts, shorten it. Or you can say, give me 3 bullet points. Or you can say, in 1 sentence, explain the rule against perpetuities. Or you can say, revise it in the style of pick a thing, right? Shakespeare, Stella from How Stella Got Her Groove Back. Pick any style and it will completely rewrite in seconds. One of my favorites, write in the first, second, or third person, because if I'm drafting something that I'm going to send to my CFO, I might want it in we language or I language, but you can ask it to do that and it will do that for you too. Your imagination is the limit. So just think of all the iterative ways that you would like to use. Associated with that is refinement. And you can actually ask it to ask you questions if you don't quite know what the right prompt is. So you can say something like, prompt me if I would like to use the improved version of my question. In other words, I asked you a question, I wasn't even sure what the question was, but if you have a better way of asking the question, then tell me, right? Or you can say, from now on, whenever I ask a question, suggest an improved version of the question to use instead. Now, that sounds great, And it'll be fun for the first couple of iterations, and then you'll get annoyed because every time you say, you give it a prompt, it's going to ask you 10 questions, and you're going to be like, oh, for heaven's sake, just give me the answer, right? But you have absolute control over how much refining it does. And so you can say, okay, you can either start a new chat that starts afresh, or you can say, okay, stop asking me the questions now. And it will give you some, cheerful answer that says, sure, I'll stop asking. Format prompts. So these are going to be really helpful for you. Let's say you're drafting a policy, and let's say you're drafting a policy for your firm, for your company, for whomever, and you already have a format that you really like to use for your formatting. Well, now you can say, using this format, take your blank template, upload it, paste, draft a policy providing guidance on compliance with, let's say, U.S. antitrust laws to sales reps and customer service reps, and you can format that template, and it will produce the same format. It's like magic. Whether it's a legal memo, it starts with the heading and it starts with an introduction, and then there is an executive summary. Whatever it is, the case brief, the advisory letter, whatever you want, you can give it a format and ask it to mimic that format in giving you the output. You're never going to want to trust whatever it gives you, but it'll give you a first draft. Table format. So, Jeff, you and I talked earlier about things like getting a table of dates, medications, prognoses. You can, whether it's a date, account numbers, transactions, especially if your company or your firm has internal large language models that are inside your firewall, where you don't have to worry about giving it sensitive data because it's safe and it's just localized to your organization. You can ask it to generate a table. You can give it like a list, just a random Word document with stuff, and you can ask it to generate a table for you. Or sometimes what I'll do is I might have a bunch of data inputs, like let's say we have my senior leadership team and I have been brainstorming. And we came up with all these ideas for something. And what I need to do is I need to organize it into a rubric, or I need to organize it and into categories of data. Then I can do that, and it will organize it for me so that it's easier. The one thing I'll tell you about tables, though, is copying and pasting out of chatbots is not seamless. So you might have to play around a bit with, I see the table. Now, how do I export that data and reorganize it so that that table is actually working? And so now I am finding that I'm not actually prompting this. Jeff, are you prompting? I don't think you're prompting my screen, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so these are just ways that you can use your new prompt abilities. Now, there are some large language models out there that will create pictures for you. Some of them will say they create pictures, and some of them are better than others. So play with them depending on what you're trying to get at and see what you like. So here's an example, user beware. I was asking, in this particular case, I was asking ChatGPT, DALL-E, to produce a picture of an African-American skeptical lawyer who's talking to a chatbot. And the first image that I got is the one that looks like the cartoon. Now pay attention. And in my head, when I first saw it, I was like, something's wrong with it, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Oh, right. She has 3 hands. And so then I said, okay, make it look like a picture. And try again. And so then I got the picture on the right. And I thought, well, okay, that's better. And then I had to tell it, well, give her, I tried give her locks, LOCS, and chat didn't know what locks were. My hair is in locks. And so I thought, okay, so Chat doesn't know what locks are. Let's try again. Give her dreadlocks. Give her neat, professional looking dreadlocks. And so I eventually got this picture. So whenever you are prompting your chatbot, you want to make sure you pay very close attention, especially to pictures, because there are things that you will find that might make you laugh, but that generally don't necessarily get you the result that you wanted. On this particular screen, you see this QR code. Jeff and I would like to give you a Mindful in 5 toolkit. And unfortunately, I don't happen to have one handy, but it is a Mindful in 5. Think of it as a care package. It's a box, and in the box, there's going to be a Mindful in 5 book that's signed just for you. And there's going to be a pen and some other good things that you can use for your mindfulness practice. And we are going to give away 3 of those. And in exchange, we would like you to answer 3 short questions about the session. So you don't have to do it yet. So you're going to see this QR code a couple more times. And it's going to ask you 3 questions, basic questions about how useful was this? And because we really want to make sure, I mean, Jeff in particular and Lexbe are very keen to give you content that's really useful, that's practical, that you can actually use immediately. And we would like to know if you found this useful. So, on to imagery. Other things that you should be aware of. DALL-E cannot spell. So in this particular case, here is the prompt that I gave it that you see at the top. Create an image of a happy, confident, knowledgeable chatbot, and above it, a banner that reads, DALL-E can't spell. And these are just 2 of the prompts of the results that I got, and neither one of them are correct. You know why? Because DALL-E can't spell. So that is something that I just want you to remember. So final tips. Remember. Large language models, sometimes wrong, never in doubt, always confident. What does that mean? It means you want to verify what your LLM tells you. You want to use a non-LLM verification source. You want to eyeball any analysis. So if I give it a brief or a legal opinion or a contract to review, and I say, give me the high points as if I am the, pick a party, I'm still going to go back and I'm still going to eyeball the result that I get against the actual document, because sometimes it'll give you an analysis and it will give you maybe some really basic things that frankly you don't really care about and you're not concerned about. Or it might miss some critical piece that is really important to your case because you know your case. So always verify what your large language model gives you. Know your subject matter. I try to avoid asking my chatbot pure fact. And if you're going to ask it pure fact, go and make sure that you verify it someplace else. So for example, you can ask Chat a question and then you can go to Perplexity and ask the same question, and Perplexity will at least give you resources that you can go and check to make sure the facts that you got are correct. So think of it again like a great virtual assistant or like a great paralegal who's read the entire internet, or an associate, and have fun. These are new tools, new possibilities. They will make you work more efficiently. And unfortunately, I feel like they're kind of like the internet. Do you remember when we all thought the internet was going to allow us to take longer vacations? Because now we didn't have to spend all those days and hours in the library looking up stuff, and see how that went. So I think large language models will be a bit like that. Wow, look at my productivity. Am I working less? No. So I'm just doing more things faster. And so, again, this is a final word of caution. We already talked about this. Don't be worried about Chat taking your job, because as we talked about earlier with Jeff, you still have to have human beings that are actioning the work and that you get out of your chatbot. And so we will have a final drawing and we will notify you of who are the lucky people who earned themselves a Mindful in 5 toolkit. And this is the kind of stuff that you might find, it'll be a bit of a surprise, that you might find in the toolkit. There might be a hat. There will definitely be a book. There might be a Starbucks gift card. There will be a pen, and there might be some Mindful in 5 bands so that you remind yourself to be mindful. And especially when you get stressed out at work and you get to worrying about the implications of, large language models. Stay abreast of AI developments. Knowing and understanding what's happening and what's coming is going to be a really great way to keep your stress in check. Elevate your game with the Mindful in 5 podcast, and we will continue to talk about ways that you can improve your productivity using mindfulness tools. So, Jeff, I will stop there, and hopefully this has been a useful exercise for our audience.
Thanks, Spiwe. That was a great presentation. I know we've gone a bit over, but I've just got a couple more things to cover to wrap up today's session. At Lexbe, we've engineered an end-to-end eDiscovery platform that includes GenAI and supports all of these use cases, as well as others, and has several pre-engineered prompts integrated into the platform. The example that you see on the screen is for summarizing multiple medical records. And with that, I'll ask our last polling question. Would you like a demo of the Lexbe eDiscovery platform? While you're answering that, I'd like to thank you for attending today's session. We'll be making the following available to webinar attendees: a recorded streaming version, an MP3 podcast, as well as a PDF. Please let us know if you have any questions or comments about this webinar or suggestions for future topics. This webinar is part of the Lexbe eDiscovery webinar series. For notices of future live and on-demand webinars as part of the series, please email us at webinars@lexbe.com or follow us on LinkedIn. Also, we'd like your advice regarding our webinar series. Please complete the survey at the end of today's session. It helps us continuously improve this program and cover the digital forensic, GenAI, and eDiscovery topics that are most relevant to you. I'd like to thank Spiwe for presenting today, and thank you for attending. Be sure to follow Lexbe on LinkedIn so you'll be alerted to the latest podcast and webinar episodes, and watch your inbox for an invite to our next webinar on best practices in eDiscovery, GenAI, and digital forensics. Take care.